As Barry said, my name's Renee Carey. I work for the North Central Pennsylvania Conservancy, and I was asked to talk a little bit about how we are funding projects as part of the North Central Pennsylvania Stream Restoration. I'm going to talk a little more specifically about a project that we did with Geisinger Health Systems in Danville, which is in Montour County. And want to start out by talking about all of these partners that are on the right-hand side of my screen. So the North Central Pennsylvania Conservancy has been working with DEP, the Fish and Boat Commission, and county conservation districts and landowners since 2007 in a partnership that we call the North Central Stream Partnership. And in that partnership, the organization I work for, the Conservancy, we apply for the grants to bring the funding together, administer those grants, do a lot of the coordination, a lot of the communication, like presentations like this, buy materials in bulk, help new watershed specialists at the conservation districts understand how the process works, tasks that they need to take on. The conservation districts are a primary contact with the landowners and have those conversations about what will happen, where we need access on the property, where materials will go, help with the permitting for the project, all of that kind of stuff. DEP provides not only funding through the Growing Greener grant program, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also provides technical assistance. We're fortunate in the North Central region that the watershed manager we work with previously worked in DEP's fencing program and some other programs, so he has a really strong technical skill set that can be used on the ground as we're helping to develop and design projects. The Fish and Boat Commission, through their Stream Habitat Division, again provides technical assistance, design assistance, and also construction oversight. At Seckler Run with Geisinger, DCNR also provided funding for a buffer planting, and then Geisinger was so happy with how things turned out, they went above and beyond and also added some pollinator plantings to help supplement and kind of enhance a little bit about the project's aesthetics. This is in their front yard, as you'll see in a second. So what I'm going to do is talk about the problem that the Stream Partnership is working to solve, what our goals are, and a little bit of that gets to how organizationally we maybe have some different goals or different objectives, but they all overlap in such a way that we can work on one project and all achieve individual organizational goals on that project. I'll talk a little bit more about where we worked and what we did, just to kind of get you thinking about how projects fit on the landscape or where on the landscape you can work. A little bit about what we did, so you just have a general idea, how we paid for this project, but also I'll talk a little bit about some other projects and how funding came together for those, and then some suggestions on who to contact. So a lot of you are in counties that are part of the North Central Stream Partnership or counties that have conservation district staff that have worked on these projects and might be able to give you some more insight. Also just want to let you know, when I was asked to present today, I explained I had already signed up for a day-long workshop on forest conservation, and that starts at 10:30. So about 10:25, they said it was okay for this session to end. I would just encourage everybody, while you get a little bit longer break, to come back at 10:55 for the next session. So before I leave this screen, what I did is in purple threw on here some of the goals of the organizations that were involved in this. So, water quality improvement, recreational use and access of streams, clean water for human health, right? That we need clean water as a society, as people. How a natural setting can help improve mental health, even if you're only outside for a couple of minutes. Goals of reducing sediment in streams for whatever reason, just reduce sediment, and goals to improve fish habitat. And so these, while they're somewhat similar, they're also somewhat divergent, but we achieved all of them in one project. So I would encourage you to think about how your projects not only meet your goals, but having conversations with other organizations and groups to think about how your project can help them achieve their goals. And that might open up other funding avenues or in-kind contributions. If you can help make that connection between what you're doing and what they would like to do for their organization. So the Stream Partnership is looking at improving the water quality of ag impaired streams. So we're looking at DEP's 303D list, right? That EPA designation of impairment. We're looking at waterways that are impaired because of agricultural settlement or agricultural siltation, and the aquatic habitat's impaired. And this photo is from Geisinger. This was taken in February of 2020. We were fortunate that there wasn't snow on the ground that day. So you can see we have an eroding stream bank. It's unstable. You can see up here that the roots are exposed on this outer edge. So if I would have taken a side profile, right, the stream bank is leaning and we've got an overhang here. As the water washes away the sediment here, it erodes, right? And then this drops down, which is why you get this grassy hump at water's edge. This was up here and it finally fell down. Poor bank vegetation, as you'll see in some other photos, this was neatly mowed lawn, super short, kept so it looked good, that good aesthetic. Doesn't have super deep root structure, as we can see here, so it's not holding a lot of soil. Poor riffle habitat in the stream and embedded substrate. And I have some photos later that show that embedded substrate. So as the Stream Partnership, we are working to decrease erosion, decrease the amount of sediment that's going into a stream. And we do that by stabilizing the stream banks, adding buffers once we stabilize the stream bank. We always stabilize first because, putting trees or shrubs up here without stabilizing the stream bank, the trees and shrubs would end up in the stream before too long. The way we do this also adds to or creates additional aquatic habitat, improves that as well to help support the fish and the macros and stuff that will be in the stream. So the three primary techniques that we use as the Stream Partnership are the in-stream habitat structures, stream bank fencing, and buffer plantings. So to give you some context on where we are, since folks are from various counties, we've got Interstate 80, which seemed like a point most people are going to be familiar with and have traveled on. We've got the town of Bloomsburg, the Lake Street exit, which has a Denny's, the Buckhorn exit, which has your Walmart, your Panera, Burger King, that kind of stuff. This is the McDonald's at the Danville exit, and we're right here. So we've got 180, 15, the West Branch of the Susquehanna. Again, big picture where we are in the state. I wanted to show you this aerial photo because you can see all of this ag use around Danville, but you can also see that our project to improve this ag impaired stream is happening in a more developed community. While we have done projects down here and up here in these ag areas, this project was not in an agricultural setting. Right, this project was literally in the front yard of what was previously an industrial manufacturing complex, was bought by Geisinger and was repurposed as a medical facility. There are same-day surgeries, there's ophthalmology services, physical therapy, a variety of things like that happening, dermatology happening in this building. There's a parking garage. You can see large parking lot. This is a Sheetz, car wash, car lot, used cars lot. So again, we aren't working in an ag setting. In this case, most of our projects are in an ag setting, but I just wanted to, point that out that It's an ag impaired stream, and we're using funding and BMPs that are typically used on farms, but we're using them in a non-farm setting. So this is Seckler Run. It's coming down through here, makes this, very unnatural 90-degree turn, and then works its way under Route 11 and comes into what is a park, the BMX bike park. So keep in mind Route 11. The other thing I wanted to point out, Route 11 is a really high visibility, high travel volume road. So Geisinger was more concerned about aesthetics than a lot of the landowners we work with, and which is something that we had to keep in mind as we were working on this project. And it didn't add any problems, but it just made us be more cognizant of some of the things we were doing and how we did it. So what we did, again, you can see the bank erosion. You can see the poor bank vegetation. You can see, you can see Cam's feet. You can see sort of Drew's feet, Todd's feet. So we were talking short grass left over at the end of winter. Jason's barely ankle deep in the stream. We've got the eroding stream bank. There's slight floodplain access, but you can see the water's still going to have to come up a bit before it's going to be able to spill out onto a floodplain here. And there's not a ton of space for that water before it's going to get to that bank. Some riprap that PennDOT had to do to stabilize Route 11. So again, an ag impaired stream in a non-ag setting is what we were working on. Here you can see a little bit more the embedded substrate, and this traffic signal ahead sign is kind of our marker in place. So I have that circled in the upcoming photos too. So again, you can sort of kind of see here, we've got eroding stream bank here, a little bit of access to the floodplain. I'm just going to mention, in case anybody noticed it, there's silt sock here because there was a water line project that had happened in the fall. So that silt sock has nothing to do with what's going to happen here. Some riprap from PennDOT, but the stream is channelized, it's over widened, and it's eroding, and the silt is coming in and settling on the bottom of the stream. So we came in and worked over 2 weeks to add log structures, which you can see one here, and it would come back into the bank, that have rock behind them or on top of them, and some, I'll say grading, but that's not the proper technical term, some grading of the stream banks to get more of that floodplain access. So as the water comes up, it can slowly start to spread out, and you lose some of that erosive force during high water events. You'll also notice we've got green at the edge of the bank. We work with the contractors that as they are taking sod off the stream bank, they lay it at water's edge, and that green up at the water's edge just helps get that there closer. So here you can see more of those log and rock structures, and they would be mud sills up through here and over here, again, stabilizing that stream bank to help prevent further erosion. And you can see just how close we were to the sheets. This is after the project. You can see the equipment is gone. So we finished up on a Wednesday. The planting contractor came in on Thursday and planted shrubs and trees. So again, the idea was, let's stop the erosion with the log and rock structures. That's the immediate end to erosion. Long term, let's add the shrubs and trees to get that root structure in place along the stream, to get shade on the stream, and to start to get that leaf input back into the stream. I saw Mel Zimmerman was on here and some of his students. So one of the ways that Pennsylvania measures water quality are those macroinvertebrates. So the logs start to provide food for macroinvertebrates from the log structures. The shade and the leaf inputs from the riparian buffer continue to improve that habitat for the macroinvertebrates and help with the water quality issues that are in this stream. So this is what it looks like today. I apologize because we are much farther back from the sign, but the buffer is doing really well. So where you can get in now is somewhat limited. This was just 2 weeks ago. You can see that the substrate is starting to clean up. Some of that sediment is moving out of the system. And these structures are designed to catch the sediment as it travels downstream, right? So as it flushes out up here, there are structures like this downstream to catch that sediment and start to build that bank back in. So it becomes a more natural channel width. You can see the trees from the buffer planting. The shrubs are a little less visible right now. And you can see the pollinator strip that was added along the buffer. And then if you have a chance to visit the site, because it is on a property that people go to, there's a walking path over here that's out of the photo that was intentionally added and is used quite a bit by staff on their breaks and at lunchtime. So just again, this was before. This is February of 2020. This is May of 2020. This is May of 2021. So just to kind of give you 2020 to 2021, you can see it looks very different to the point that in places you can't really see the stream. The vegetation has come in as it should and is providing that structure. So this screen gives you an idea of how the project at Geisinger on Seckler Run was funded. So we had a Growing Greener grant from DEP that covered the cost of the logs, the rock, the contractor that we brought in to do the work. The landowner, which in this case was Geisinger, provided staff. Some of their building and ground staff were on hand for both the stream habitat work as well as the planting work. It turns out the coordinator for Montour County's Master Gardener program works at Geisinger on the building and grounds crew. So they scheduled her to be on site and help oversee all of the planting stuff because she is taking care of the buffer now. So they were able to provide staff time to help during the project. They also rented a stone truck to help move materials around on site. The tree planting, the shrubs, the trees, the pollinator strip, that was all paid for using DCNR funding with Geisinger providing the match for that. So that's how we paid for this site, but I want to talk about each of those funding sources a little bit more and how we've used them in other places. So I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with DEP's Growing Greener grant program. It's open right now. Many of you, like me, are probably working on applications to get them submitted in the next 2 weeks. If you aren't familiar, though, right, it's a statewide program. Priority is being given to projects in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Each DEP region, and there are 6 in the state, has a regional advisor. Their title is a watershed manager. You want to reach out to the watershed manager and talk to them. They will be the person you can go to with questions when you're applying to talk to about whether or not a project is eligible to apply for while you're applying. And then if you're successful in obtaining a grant, they will be the person you're working with as you implement the grant, do the project. They're always, well, my only experience is in the North Central region, but they've always been super helpful. And if they don't have an answer to your question, find the answer for you. So the match, because as we all know, it comes down to money. The match on a Growing Greener grant is a minimum of 15%. Obviously, if you have more than 15% match, it's in your favor and can be very helpful. And match can be, anything from in-kind contribution, like Geisinger's employees who worked for us and Geisinger paying for the equipment, to cash or other funding sources. So the landowner contributions generally work as match. So again, at Geisinger, they had employees who were helping us out. They had rented equipment. They did a lot of the work, the site prep for the buffer planting, for the pollinator strip planting then in the fall. But we also have landowners who donate the seed and mulch. When we're in an ag setting, a lot of times we'll get the old bales from last year for the mulching, or they'll buy the seed because they want something specific. We've had landowners who not only provide the seed and mulch, right? Their kids do the seeding and mulching for us. And if you noticed all the areas of straw in the project, that is always greatly appreciated. Again, when we're in a farm setting, a lot of times those landowners have equipment that they can move materials, that we can get them delivered once. We can only get them delivered in one spot because of site conditions, and then they have to be shuttled from there. So is the landowner willing and able? Do they have the equipment to move the materials during the project or stage them ahead of time to help expedite the project? And a lot of times they like doing that, in part to feel involved, and in part so they have a little more control over how much equipment is running back and forth and where the equipment is running. We have had landowners who have provided cash to help offset the costs. These landowners are literally losing land with every rainstorm and want that problem solved, and don't deal with this stuff every day. So they are always very appreciative when the watershed specialist can say to them, the partnership will handle these aspects of it. This is what we need you to do. And they know that, folks are helping them through the process. And so a lot of times they're willing to buy the stone, buy the seed and mulch, contribute towards the cost of the project. We've had landowners who, again, will send the kids out to help, or have taken vacation time so that they can be on site and help with the project. We've had them, they were intending to do X, Y, and Z on the property, and we're going to have to rent a track skid steer to do it. So they'll just rent the track skid steer for the week of the project and, do what they need to do at night. So that landowner contribution and having those conversations can really help increase your match above that 15%. The other thing we found that does is the landowners who, whether it's moving materials, helping with seeding and mulching, they appear to have more buy-in to the project, seem to be more engaged and more long-term interested, and continue to communicate after the project's over. So if you're looking at buffer plantings, DCNR has several different grant programs for buffer plantings. Overall, DCNR's grants are 50-50. So they'll give you half of the project costs in cash, and you have to find the match for the other 50%. Again, whether that's in-kind time, another grant source, the landowner writing out a check. DCNR, because they have a couple of different programs, some of the programs you fill out the C2P2 application and they'll decide which program to fund it with. Other programs have separate applications. So just keep an eye on DCNR's riparian buffer webpage, and that will give you all of the information and where you can look. So we have had landowners who were willing to do some of the work through NRCS, and we were able to use that as match. So the Natural Resource Conservation Service, it's a federal agency, primarily work with agricultural landowners and do projects to implement best management practices on farms. I won't even pretend to understand how things get ranked. and all of that stuff. But we have had landowners who, in addition to the in-stream work we were going to do, wanted or needed stream bank fencing. And they were willing to apply to NRCS because one of the caveats with NRCS is the landowner has to apply. So for Growing Greener and DCNR, I should have pointed that out before, you as a municipality or a unit of government or as a nonprofit, right, you can apply for the grant, do the grant administration, pay the bills, do all of that. All the landowner has to do is agree to do the project, sign the landowner grantee agreement, provide you with the access to do the project. So it's pretty easy on the landowner if you're applying for the Growing Greener grant. NRCS, the landowner has to apply, the landowner has to get the work done, the landowner gets reimbursed from NRCS. So there are more hoops for the landowner, but if they're an ag producer, they've probably worked with NRCS before, they're familiar with the process. If they can do their stream bank fencing through NRCS, that can then be shown as matched to the Growing Greener grant. So again, it helps increase your 15% to something higher than that. I don't remember why I have we are working on 1,000 feet plus stream project length. This is different. I don't remember what I wanted to tell you guys about that. I apologize, but we are working on shorter stream lengths. It's 1,000 feet or less. So we can do this work under general permits. That's what it was. So we intentionally design and do smaller projects so that we can do them under general permits. It allows us to do work faster, shortens the time frame. Again, we were talking to Geisinger in January and February of 2020. The first meeting was in January of 2020, and we were implementing in May of 2020 because we had the funding lined up through block grants to do the work. So by doing general permits, it allows us to do the work more quickly. It reduces the cost because, again, the type of work we're doing under the general permit is something that, there are technical service providers that can provide the assistance to get the design done. We're not spending, we don't have a large portion of our budget, there we go, isn't for the design of the project. We're putting more money into implementation than we are design because we're doing smaller projects. Right, we're looking at the smaller streams. As you can see from the photos, Seckler Run isn't super wide. So, if this has convinced you that maybe thinking about how your community's MS4 goals and the types of projects you want to implement might also meet up with some of the goals of your county conservation district. If you're in Columbia County, reach out to Brittany and Nancy. We've done projects with the Columbia County Conservation District. We still have 2 scheduled for this summer, right? They'll understand if you, let's say to them, Renee was talking about this. Can you explain more? Can we look at some projects and talk about how these MS4 projects might tie into what you want to do as a district? Luzerne County is not a county we work in. However, Jen used to work at Columbia County, and we did several projects with her when she worked at Columbia County. And Mike did his internship at Northumberland County and spent a whole summer doing these projects. So again, if you pick up the phone and call them, they'll understand what you're talking about. Sean and Todd in Montour County, if you're in Montour County, are complete rock stars. They got the Geisinger project rolling. And we do 2 to 4 projects a year with them as part of the Stream Partnership, where they're identifying the landowners, handling those logistics. I'm paying the bills. If you're from Lycoming County, Carrie and Tim, again, are going to be very familiar with what you're talking about and would be able to have those conversations with you. However, if you're not in those counties and you're in Berks, Lackawanna, Schuylkill, or Susquehanna County, I'm going to direct you to Mark Saucer. Mark oversees the stream habitat guys at the Fish and Boat Commission. And the Fish and Boat Commission has a multi-year grant from EPA to do their design and construction oversight work in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So as technical service providers, they would come out, take a look at the project, let you know if they think the log and rock structures that they use for fish habitat would be useful in the situation. They would design the project, and then if you secure the grant funding, they would come out and do the construction oversight. So again, depending on how you're funding the purchase of the rock and the logs and paying for the contractor or excavator, there's some match possibly for you in the time that they're spending with doing the design and the construction oversight. So it is 10:27. Look at that. I've got 2 or 3 minutes for questions, if there are any. I'll get out of this and stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Thank you, Renee. We do have a couple minutes for some quick questions. If someone has a question, please just go ahead and unmute your mic, ask your question, and then mute it again for the response. Thank you. And we've got one in the chat. Do you see that, Renee?
Yes. So the question, do you look at whether flow is attenuated upstream first? So one of the other benefits is by working with the county conservation districts, they are obviously super familiar with, I'll say, the neighborhood that we're working in and what is happening upstream and downstream of the site. And, I'll say that what we do isn't going to work at every site. So we definitely do look at site conditions upstream and downstream and land uses and other things like that. So, yeah.
Other questions verbally or in the chat, please feel free. We only have Renee for a couple of minutes.
And then I get to go learn about forest conservation. So what maintenance is required? So the in-stream stuff shouldn't need maintenance as long as it gets a chance, a couple of months to settle in before the first high water event. If the high water event comes through before that initial ENS gets a chance to take hold, you may have to go in, do a little, put some topsoil back and reseed stuff. But as long as you get that initial vegetation, other than, we ask the landowners to keep an eye on it. There may be times that I'll say flood debris has to be pulled off of a structure, but they're really pretty low maintenance, which is another benefit. And do you have a tool to identify sites then? So the tool we use to identify sites, Ellen, is more or less our eyes or what the landowners are telling us. So I know there are a lot of tools out there. Chesapeake Conservancy is developing some GIS tools and other stuff, but we're really looking at bank height and stream width. Those are two things that really help us figure out where we want to work and if this is going to be useful or not. Because again, the higher that bank is, the harder it is to get that reconnection to floodplain. So the bank height is a huge thing for us.
All right, thank you. We are out of time here. Unfortunately, I think we have Renee's contact information. So I would encourage everybody to call her, send her an email anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Renee, very much. That was a very interesting project. And for everyone else, just a reminder that our next session starts at 10:50 with Jamie Eberl. So please do press the red leave button to leave this session when you go and open the new link for the 10:50 session.